Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. We talk a lot on this podcast about the housing market, particularly about the extraordinary growth in house prices over the past couple of years. While the growth has slowed now and in some cases prices are dropping, the market is still extremely tough for a first home buyer. It's little wonder so many turn to the bank of mum and dad. A CanStar survey in December found 23% of millennials felt parents had an obligation to help their children buy a first home. Not all of their parents agreed, mind you. Baby boomers, there was only 16% of them that thought the same thing. So, is there enough demand for a new home lender, specifically targeting this market? Brian Hartzer is a former CEO of Westpac and has teamed up with former ANZ New Zealand CEO Dr. Jenny Fagg to start to be a non-bank lender focused on the bank of mum and dad. Brian Hartzer, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Well, thanks for having me. Great to talk to you again.
So are your children old enough to have asked you for a loan?
Not quite, but they're getting there. We've got a 23-year-old and a 21-year-old, and I'm trying to avoid that topic, I have to say. But it's a serious one. It's a big issue.
Yeah, it is. I mean, those numbers, the CanStar survey, just how many people felt, well, not just the obligation, but they need help. If you're a 25 or a 30-year-old trying to get a loan, it must be pretty tough.
This is a huge issue. It's a huge issue. It's the downside of the growth in house prices that we've had, which has made people very wealthy, which on paper at least, which is great. But even young people who've got terrific professional jobs can cover the cost of a mortgage are really struggling to get that down payment. And it's without parental help, it's going to be really tricky for a lot of them.
Okay, so why is it? I mean, you know banking so well. You've been in the big banks for many, many years, and you ran Westpac. Why start a non-bank lender? You're kind of taking on the gorillas in a sense.
Well, I don't see it that way. The way we think about it is really that the banks have abdicated a space, and we think that's unfortunate and saw an opportunity to come in and fill that space. And essentially what's happened is, as a consequence of overregulation, banks have largely walked away from lending money to people over 55. And that's because the focus on serviceability, which is really about income, which makes sense, has meant, though, that for people who have left full-time employment, they may have very valuable assets in their homes and other assets. But the banks, because of the way that they've interpreted the regulation, essentially have said that's too hard. We don't want to do asset-based lending anymore. And we felt that not for everyone, but for, say, the top 10, 20% of people over 55, these people have developed significant assets in their home. Maybe they have investment properties, shares, and they ought to be able to make the most of this phase of their life. And for many people, the research told us that was about helping their family onto the property ladder, creating good memories with their family. And we felt there was an opportunity here.
Okay, so take me through how To Be works. Now, that's To Be as in two, the number, capital B-E, To Be works. Just take me through how it works, how customers can use you.
Sure. Well, what we do is focus on the parents specifically who have developed significant assets through owning their home. And what we offer is our first product is a 5-year term loan that has a fixed rate of interest. And they have an incredibly simple online application process, which we follow up with a video call to make sure people aren't vulnerable and understand what they're getting themselves into. And they have the option to capitalize the interest. In other words, pay all the interest at the end if they like. So potentially there's zero impact on today's cash flow. But it means they can access up to $500,000 of equity in their home, which they can then give or on lend to their kids as the down payment for a house. And because we rely on the assets, not the income and the expense picture of the customer, it means that our application process is incredibly easy. So literally you can go online and do the application in about 20 minutes. We do all the checks on the value of the house, the identification, the anti-money laundering checks, all that sort of stuff happens digitally. And we then schedule a video call with the customer. All going well, we have literally had people apply in the morning and have the money in their account by the end of the day, which is a pretty dramatic change compared to the mortgage lending experience that a lot of people are finding, particularly people in this age bracket.
Yeah, okay. So I think this conversation's making me right. So it's the top end of that over 55. So they may need to own their $2 million home or thereabouts. I mean, the number's a bit arbitrary, but they need to own assets. They can, I mean, the idea is that you can pay the interest at the end. So potentially if you're helping someone out in 5 years, if you're downsizing, things like that, where you get a lump of money, it might actually work out better in terms of cash flow to do it that way. So the question is, it's the very top end, is it, that you're really targeting?
I would say the way we've set the goal is you have to have over $1 million of assets in your home.
Oh, okay.
And you have to have $500,000 of other net assets. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to be in a position where we would have to throw someone out of their home.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that this is for people who would like to access the money, but not for people who need the money, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Hence the bank of mum and dad.
Yeah. The other thing I should mention is, and you're right that they might choose to downsize, but many of the people that we've seen in this demographic have other assets that they could sell, but they choose not to. And also the kids, once they're on the property ladder, may be in a position in 5 years' time to refinance the home and pay the parents back if they like.
Yeah. Okay. So how much demand is there for it?
Well, we've seen tremendous interest so far. It's early days yet, and so we're waiting to see. But certainly, all the research that we've done says that a very significant portion of people in this demographic, this is almost the number one issue for them about how do they help their kids out, and they're frustrated with the lack of options.
Okay, your website, the 2B website, seems to focus a lot on education as well, including how to set up the bank of mum and dad and how to preserve family relationships. That is definitely a complicating factor.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that, and that has been a huge focus for us. The research that we did said that a lot of people who have been helping their kids are doing it completely undocumented. And when they do that, they set themselves up for both financial risk if they haven't really thought through what they're doing and how much they can afford to offer, and also relationship risk, because if the kids don't pay it back, or if a big issue, for example, is when the kid's relationship breaks down. They've given a gift, say, to a couple, the couple's relationship breaks down and half that money is gone. And, so there's a whole bunch of tricky things that you need to think through when you're helping family members. And we found there really weren't very good resources out there. So a big part of what we're trying to do is bring the bank of mom and dad into a more well-documented, well-thought-through process that preserves those family relationships.
It's a great idea because people of my generation who have benefited from getting into the Sydney home market 25 years ago, and we've been on the ride, the thing that stops me is definitely that codifying the deal with the kids. And you're right, there's always a third party, like the outlaw or the in-law, depending how you want to see it. But that's a reality for most people.
Well, that's right. And on the website, you can actually register and we will send you our top tips and traps and things to work through. So it's a free document you can get that gives you all the things you should think about. And for customers, you can also download literally a template that you can use to document an intra-family loan with suggestions about how to deal with some of these issues.
Stay with me, Brian. We'll be back in a minute. My guest today is Brian Hartzer, co-founder of 2B. So more broadly, Brian, what do you make of the housing market at the moment? Do you think it will become more affordable for first home buyers?
Well, certainly the increase in interest rates translates through to the inherent value of homes. And so you would expect that prices will come down a bit over the next little while. But that's in the context of a huge run-up that we've seen and continued challenges in terms of the supply of housing. So I do think prices are going to come down, and I do think that is going to create some more opportunities for people to get on the housing ladder. So on balance, I think this is a good thing.
I got to ask you, are you enjoying your post-Westpac life? Because being a CEO sounds glamorous, but God, it's hard work, and you're under the gun all the time.
Well, getting to lead Westpac is an incredible privilege, and I loved it. And I wish it hadn't ended the way it did. But I am really enjoying this phase of my life. I've always had an entrepreneurial bent. I'm fascinated by technology and really excited about the opportunities that are created by technology to create new businesses and help people in new ways. So it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it and really excited about this particular opportunity.
Okay. Do you think when you look from outside one of the big banks, kind of these nimble new players such as 2B, they really do have an advantage in some way, not having the legacy systems and some of that comes with being a big bank?
There are pros and cons of both, but you're absolutely right. I mean, for example, we've been able to build what we think is a market-leading credit origination process for less than it would have cost us to scope the project at Westpac.
Yeah.
It's remarkable when you're focused, when you have, we can't do everything. We've picked a particular niche that we think we can do incredibly well and help a group of customers who need the help. So we've got a narrow focus, and that narrow focus combined with new technology means that we can be incredibly efficient and create a great customer experience.
And do you think there'll be lots more of your types of business, not necessarily in your market, but just people picking at bits of the banks over the next decade or so?
Yeah, well, we've seen a lot of that over the last few years, and I do think that's a trend. The technology is allowing people to unbundle aspects of financial services. Over time, there are benefits from bundling as well, so I don't think it's a black or white situation, but there's no question that we're in an environment that makes it possible for people to stand up businesses very quickly. And the fact that COVID has driven so many people into a digital world means that the barriers to getting access to customers have come down. People are much more familiar with looking for services online. And I think that makes it a lot easier for people to get businesses going where traditionally you might have needed to build bricks and mortar.
Good luck with it, Brian, and thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thanks so much, Sean. Great to talk to you.
That was Brian Hartzer, former CEO of Westpac and co-founder of To Be. That's the number 2, BE, To Be. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Remember, you should get professional advice before making any investment decisions. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.